and I'll take note of that. Okay, so Jeremy, I've unmuted you, so if you have anything to communicate verbally, you can communicate to me verbally. I'll be able to hear it over the phone.
Okay.
Okay, great. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Diana, and I'm an implementation specialist with Taskstream. As a brief introduction, Taskstream is a cloud-based software used by educational institutions to collect key assessments and different artifacts of work from students that they will use for assessment, typically with rubric-based assessment. And the goal of that being to provide evidence to accrediting bodies that students are effectively learning, and to share evidence of that learning with the accreditors. So Carey Business School is going to be using Taskstream to collect these key assessments from students that are specified for certain courses. And for your implementation of Taskstream, we've set up an integration through Blackboard. And the idea of integrating with Blackboard is that students generally are going into Blackboard for LMS-based submissions of assignments for the sake of grading. So instead of having students go to Blackboard to upload an assignment for grading purposes, and then having them go over to Taskstream to upload the same work for the sake of assessment, the integration will allow students to just upload the work all in one place so they don't feel like there's such a sense of redundancy. One thing to keep in mind with work that you'll be receiving through Blackboard in Taskstream from your students is that the assessment process should be handled with a mind towards assessment and accreditation rather than the specific context of grading for the value of that assignment and the calculation of the student's score, the student's grade in the class. So it's a little slight adjustment in the way that you are thinking about the quality of the student work when you're assessing. One thing I'll offer as a distinguishing feature between grading and assessing, for example, let's say you're using a rubric to score a student's performance. And because the student is in the process of learning about different skills in business, they aren't masters yet of those skills. They are in a status of building those skills or developing those skills. So on a rubric for assessment, you might say the student is approaching mastery of this skill, or they're developing mastery of this skill, but they're not there yet. But if you give them, let's say, a 2 out of 4 on a rubric, you're giving them a 50%, which in most grading scales would translate to a score of an F. So you'd be telling the student that they're failing, even though they're pretty much on target for where they should be as a student who's acquiring skills by attending a university. So I just wanted to give that brief introduction to try and give you some context of what Taskstream is used to do, and the difference between how you will be using Blackboard and then how you'll be using Taskstream, which will be accessed through Blackboard. So I'll pause for a second just to see if there are any questions. Again, you can send questions through the chat in the WebEx menu, or you can direct them through Jeremy. His phone is still live, so he can communicate verbally with me. Okay, I just wanted to do a count of 10 to see if any questions did come up, but it looks like we are good to go. I'm going to go ahead and log into the Blackboard account that was set up for me by Carey Business School. You should see the Blackboard portal on the screen through what's being broadcast from my WebEx account. And I think for all of you as faculty members at Johns Hopkins, you would log in using the JHU Enterprise Authentication. In my case, I am not a Johns Hopkins user, so I'm going to use the link on the right-hand side. So that's something that will be a little bit different for you than what you're seeing me do. But I'm going to go ahead and log into my account. And sorry about these sirens. Hopefully they'll pass quickly. Here we are on the Johns Hopkins Blackboard page. We're right now on the My Institution page, but I am an instructor and I want to go in and evaluate some work that's been submitted to me from Blackboard by a student for assessment scoring purposes. And that means I'm going to click on the courses link here. Opens up a list of courses to which I've been given access in Blackboard. In my case, I just have a single course, and this is CU 120.601.YZ.FA14, which I believe is Business Communications. And I'm going to click right on the link to it. And then we have the course shell for Business Communication, Fall 2014, information about announcements and midterm exam details. And as an evaluator, oh, and yes, sorry, here, let me enlarge the screen. Okay, so I enlarged the display of the text and the display of the screen a bit. Hopefully this is coming through more clearly for everybody. So I am going to click on the assignments link on the left-hand frame here. And this is where I'll be able to get to the link to Taskstream where I can evaluate student key assessments. So I click on assignments. And when the page loads, you'll see there's an item listed here called Taskstream. And so I can click on Taskstream and I will be signed in to my Taskstream account without having to leave the Blackboard portal and enter a username and password for my Taskstream account. So this is something that will be set up for all of you as faculty members with access to certain courses where key assessments are staged. You won't need to worry about login credentials, a new set of username and password for the Taskstream site. You can just click right on the link, and it'll open up a frame within Blackboard to Taskstream. So I know there's a lot of information here that you really don't need to pay very much attention to, all of the tools that are available in Taskstream that you won't be using. So your area of focus should be on this Evaluation Required button up at the sort of the middle of the page. And you can click right on that Evaluation Required button. And then you can check this box for Carey Business School course listing. It's possible that in the future we may have new iterations of the Carey Business School course listing. So there will be additional items in this checklist. But I'm going to click the Continue button. Okay, and so this is our evaluation grid. The Taskstream evaluation grid, where you have information about work that's been submitted for evaluation, and it belongs to you to do the evaluation. So you can see there's a date and time of submission. There's also the name of the author. So in Taskstream, we refer to students as authors because they are the authors of content in Taskstream. And in some cases, we don't have students submitting work to faculty members. Sometimes it's faculty members submitting work to faculty members, or business team members submitting work to a supervisor. So to make that term applicable to all different types of users, we call students authors in the system. So that's why this word author is appearing. We also have a status column, and you can see the status of both of these pieces of work is submitted. And there's a category name. So the category is always going to be the name of the course in which the student submitted an assignment. You may be a faculty member responsible for scoring work in more than one course, so there may be more than one course listed here once there is more work submitted to you. Then under the requirement heading, it's the name of the assignment. So this is business communication. We have one submission for strategy memo and another for white paper. And then the program name and the DRF template name are always going to be consistent But they, again, going back to the idea of future iterations, there may be more than one program and template name in the future. Okay, so I'm going to pause for a moment. So it says, are we supposed to see Taskstream tabs for our current courses? Oh, and I apologize. I should have stressed in the beginning that I encourage everyone just to follow along and watch what I'm doing. You don't need to do this hands-on. I know some of you are in a computer lab, so I think laptops were intentionally left out of the lab, but some of you I know are at home. So I just want to say, don't worry about following along in your own Blackboard accounts right now. Follow along with me so you can see the steps that I'm taking. One other point I'd like to make is that this is being recorded. So when it is time for you to go into Blackboard and score student work, you'll be able to follow along with this recording if you need to. Okay, so, and I also, just as far as like, if you're supposed to see the Taskstream tab for your current courses, I think that depends on what's been set up in Blackboard so far. I think the setup for Taskstream is completed, but there may be additional steps needed by Blackboard administrators to get a Taskstream link to appear for you. Thanks very much for that question. Okay, so here we have two assignments. In order to evaluate an assignment, you click on the button that says Evaluate. So I have Zach Marcus work submitted this morning in the strategy memo assignment for business communication. I'm going to click on the Evaluate button, and here I'll see a file attachment. So you have this heading that says View Author Work. Remember, author and student are synonymous, and the name of the student is here, Zach Marcus. If you need to view the directions for the assignment, you can click on the link here. In most cases, it's referring students to view the syllabus for the course. Students can also view the evaluation method, and you're able to see that in the work submission area. So rather than clicking on the file attachment to view it from here, you can click on the green button on the left-hand side that says Evaluate, Score Work, and you'll get two windows side by side. So on the left-hand side, we have the window with the file attachment that the student submitted, and this is just a sort of demo PDF that was uploaded, so it's not going to be a realistic representation of the strategy memo. But still, I want to show you the interface, so I'm opening the PDF. And then I can close this preview page. So I have the PDF open in front of me, and then I have the rubric. And so you can have these two windows open side by side. But in order to give you a clear demonstration of how the rubric looks, I'm going to open this rubric window to full screen, and then help get you acquainted with the layout of the rubric. So this rubric for strategy memo has the criteria over on the left-hand side. So it's content assignment parameters, and there are a number of bolded items that you should be looking for in the strategy memo that the student submitted. Chances are that you've probably already graded the strategy memo. I think that I've been told by Ignore and Jeremy that many of you are using Blackboard for grading, and that sometimes the grading will have been completed a couple weeks prior, and that the scoring for assessment may not happen until a couple of weeks later. So at this point, you may already be familiar with the strategy memo and remembering back to what the student did, but again, you can also go back to that other window where the student's paper is open and view it for specific pieces of information. So you can go through and read the criteria. For each criterion, you can enter a score of not good enough, and that's going to be greater than or equal to 0 or less than 6, and then greater than or equal to 6 or less than 9 for good, and then for excellent, equal to or greater than 9 or equal to or less than 10. And you need to enter a numeric score in this text box, and keep in mind, like, the score that you enter can include decimal points. So if you want to say, oh, you know, they did pretty well, I'm going to give them an 8.2, you just enter that score right in the text box. And if you wish to include a comment of some kind, relevant to that criterion, you can click in the comments on this criterion box, and it'll open up and give you a little bit more space to include a comment. So I thought your content was well presented. And throughout the rubric, as you're working on it, you can click the Save Draft button just to save your progress. And then it goes back into editable mode. And you can scroll down to the next criterion. So then we have audience, and I'll give a score of 7.5. Any comment on audience? And then we have organization. So the paper was well presented, well organized. I'm going to do an 8.5, so it's a high good. And then the mechanics, format, and document design were also pretty well done, so 7.9. And I'll say there were some word choice issues. And then down at the bottom of the rubric, you can see there is a final score automatically computed based on criteria scores. So the score that you're viewing here is a cumulative total, is total 40 points, and the score that's being calculated is a 32.1. So even though I said the student got a score of good for all of the criteria, that would work out to like an 80%, which is really just average. And so average for a student in his or her class is actually probably going to equate to a higher letter grade. So that's, again, just I want to reinforce the distinction between grading and assessing for the sake of accreditation. Okay, so then you also have an overall comments area where you can provide holistic comments to the student on the paper in general. And there's an area where you can upload a file attachment. That could be if you want to provide a resource to them, or if you saved a version of the paper to your desktop and then did track changes in Word and saved those comments, you could upload the marked up version of the paper here. And then finally, you need to make a decision about a couple of things at the foot of this rubric. So first of all, you want to record the score as final and release the evaluation to the student now, is the area in green. I know a lot of you don't want to actually send back the rubric scores to students, so you should choose this blue option that says record as final, but release evaluation to author later. And maybe not worry about the send back for revision, which would be a means by which you can tell the student that you've scored it, you want them to make changes to it, and to please kind of pay attention to the rubric that you're sending back to them so they can make informed decisions about changes to their work and then resubmit it for a second round of scoring to you. Okay, so then finally, at the bottom, we have the transfer to Blackboard gradebook. So the Blackboard gradebook, it can be populated if you fill this section out. You'll need to check the box here that says send final score without comments. It's calculating it out of 100%, but in this case, you would probably want to put 32.1. And with or without overall comments. But again, if you don't check this box, then no score is going to be sent over to the Blackboard gradebook. Again, I know a lot of you will already have graded students in Blackboard on this assignment, and that the rubric scoring process is a separate and distinct process. So I'm going to leave that unchecked here, and I'm going to record it as final and maybe release the evaluation to the student at a later time. I click the Submit Evaluation Now button. And let me get back to the Blackboard page. Okay, so that's the PDF from the student that I had opened and viewed in a separate tab. But now I go back to my evaluation grid where I only have a single submission left to evaluate, and this one is a different assignment. It's the white paper for business communication. So you may be aware that there are other assignments within business communication that are also being assessed for the sake of accreditation. And those are set up as what we call no submission requirements. So one thing to keep in mind is you may have no submission requirements that need to be assessed or evaluated in the Taskstream area beyond just these items that have been submitted by students. So you need to click this checkbox that says no submission required items, and then click the update button to add any of those into your evaluation grid. So you can see I have 3 other pieces of work to evaluate. The first one is a briefing or proposal, and then that's actually ready to be evaluated for 2 different people, for Ignore and for Zach Marcus. And then we also have an individual presentation. So the concept of a no submission required evaluation applies especially in cases where a student does a presentation in class. There's not any type of artifact that they're going to be uploading into Taskstream, but you may also have an in-class exam, and 1 or 2 questions may be essential for demonstrating like a certain program outcome or the achievement of a certain standard or skill set by students. And so you may isolate that specific exam question and do an assessment of it with a rubric in order to generate the assessment data, the performance data for the sake of accreditation. So those are different instances where you might have a no submission required item. And again, to remove those, you can uncheck this box and click the update button one more time, or just check the little box for no submission required items, click update, and then they reappear. Okay, so the evaluation process for a no submission requirement is almost identical to a submission requirement. There just won't be an actual paper or file attachment or a PowerPoint deck to view. And I'm stopping for a moment. There's a question about a group submission. You might have a group submission, like a group of students all did a presentation in class. There would be a no submission requirement for each of them. I think you would be providing an evaluation of the individuals and the work that they did as part of that group, but there is not a group grading tool or a group grade that will come up for the sake of assessment through Taskstream. So thank you for that question. The last thing that I want to show you is the Turnitin integration. And here, sorry, there's another question. So multiple authors. Again, I just, as far as a project on which many students have participated, they would all need to be evaluated individually. We don't have a group evaluation or a group scoring rubric. So it won't be like, okay, I'm evaluating this group of 4 students one time, and the evaluation will be with all 4 of them. I think the expectation would be that the 4 individual students working in the group may have contributed to different extents, and they would be evaluated based on their independent efforts in that group project. Okay, so there's a question that says, could you please let us know what we should do when the work to be graded using the rubrics is a paper-based exam? How will that be entered into the system? So the exam result or the question and answer are not going to be entered into the Taskstream evaluation area. You will just refer back to the exam and view the question and answer and evaluate the student using a no submission requirement like you're seeing here. So the no submission requirements have the green circle with the exclamation point inside of them. The requirement has no green circle next to it. Okay. And so, Jeremy, I just want to check with you quickly. Am I responding to that question okay about the exam scores?
Yeah, basically, yeah, you're right. So exams will be non-submission assignments. So we will, figure out the way to get the exam scores in the system later.
So maybe that's something that the individual faculty members won't need to be responsible for doing?
Yeah, sorry, can you wait for a second? We have... Yes, we have created rubrics specifically for the exams, actually. So we will show instructors who have exams as assessments how to use that rubric to grade exams.
Okay. Thank you, Jeremy.
Can you wait a second? We have...
Yes.
2 questions. Does the grade on this have to be the same as the grade that you give in Blackboard? And must the student see this, or can you fill this out and never show the student?
Could you hear Diana?
Yes, and
question?
so I think the one big point to be emphatic about is that the score that you give to the student for the sake of the grade, in many cases may be higher than the score that you give them on the rubric. Again, the rubric, you're being mindful of outcomes-based assessment, different program outcomes, different standards for AACSB, whereas with the grade, you're thinking of the quality of work the student did in the context of the course, and kind of where they fall with respect to other students, like is the student an A student, a B student, is kind of a different question of, like, is the student doing good or excellent on skills that they're in the process of acquiring. So in most cases, I don't think it's going to be necessary for the grade and the rubric score to be identical. In many cases, they will be different. And I'm...
But it can be the question. You do not have to show them. And
no, you do not have to. So here, I'll go into this submission item. So when you're evaluating a piece of work from a student, you can give them a score on all of the different criteria. And I'm going to just jump over some of these. So you record as final, but release evaluation to author later, but maybe you have no intention of ever releasing this to the student in the future. I would recommend just choosing the blue option by default if you don't want to share their...
That was my question. That was my question. Do we have to do it later?
No, you don't have to.
Okay. And when it's weighted, I have one more question. When it's weighted, when you hit, to calculate if there are 4 criteria for the rubric, is it out of the 40 points, or is it translated to 100%? If
it was weighted, it would calculate the score still out of 40 points, but some of the criteria would receive more value than others. So maybe this is like...
I understand that, but if we did elect to transmit it, I've asked if we have to transmit it to Blackboard, and the answer is no. But if we wanted to transmit it to Blackboard and we're using 100% score there, when we hit the transfer button, will it translate to 100% points?
No,
I guess the 40.
It does calculate out of the raw score, which was development that was done.
Okay, I get it. All right, thank you.
But yeah, so just to be clear, like, even though this is out of 60, you could still give a score out of 95.
我觉得那个视频就是他在放的时候，我就要打一个电话，在这儿有语音，然后看一下。
90 or 95.
对，好奇怪。然后现在人家天。
Can someone mute your phone, please? You're talking in Chinese.
So you get 95.
Okay. I think I've muted the phone. Okay, so the last thing that I wanted to show you, I'm going to close this the evaluation pages with the rubric and the work submission is an area where you can view the originality report that is generated automatically when a student uploads a file attachment of some kind. So in this case, I do have a file attachment just called artifact.doc. I can click to view the file attachment. It's just a lorem ipsum document, so chances are it's probably going to have a pretty high originality score. I'm opening that file attachment so I can show it to you. I opened on the other. Okay, so here is a paper that a student wrote and submitted for a rubric evaluation. And if a student uploads a file attachment, when you go into Taskstream to score it, you'll see that there is a tab over on the right-hand side of the page that says Originality Report. So if I click on this Originality Report tab, I can see the originality score was actually 100%. So it exactly matches another paper in the Turnitin database, which is probably a bit of a bad sign. You might want to begin an investigation of some sort to see if the student has plagiarized. I think it's very unlikely that you'll have students who have a 100% score. I think I've submitted this paper to Turnitin before, which is why I've got the 100%. But so if you click on this full report button, you'll get another window with a report generated by Turnitin. So you can see, like, we're in Blackboard, but we're also in Taskstream, and then within Taskstream we also have Turnitin opening. So there are multiple different windows open, but this is showing in red all of the text that matches some other paper in the Turnitin database of all of the papers that they have. So it's 100% similar. It's not, it's not highlighting a specific phrase, it's the entire paper. So I'm going to close this window now and just show you again, so the Originality Report tab is here, and there's a button that will take you to the full report here. And if you need to redirect back to view the actual work submission, you can click on this View Work tab. And at this point, I'm going to click the Cancel Evaluate Later button because I want to show you again how I got to the Turnitin page. Okay, so I'm going to start all the way back into My Institution link just to do a review of how to navigate the Blackboard system to get into Taskstream assignments. So I click on Courses. And now I'm clicking on the course name. And now I'm clicking on the assignments link. And I have a Taskstream link.
And I'm sorry, does the student submit this to Taskstream and turn it in, or they can just do Task? Okay. Oh, yeah, okay. And do we have to set that up, or do you guys? Okay.
Okay, so there was a question about how do you treat a second submission when the first submission is already in the Turnitin database. I believe that if the submission is coming from the same student, the student is assigned an ID number so that the match would be excluded from that student against him or herself. So the question was, how do you treat a second submission when the first submission is already in the Turnitin database? So also I should say the reason that my paper is matching up against me is because I have a whole bunch of different Taskstream accounts, and I've demonstrated this for a bunch of different institutions. So the ID number assigned to me is different from one institution to the next. So unfortunately, I've given a bad example. But within the Carey Business School, if a student submits a paper and it's been uploaded to the Turnitin database, the Turnitin system does assign an ID to that student. So if the student submits the same paper, he or she will be excluded from a match against him or herself. And that's all done through the assignment of an ID number for the sake of exclusion. So Turnitin knows that this is the same student submitting the same paper and is not going to do a 100% match against that because it's the same person.
Will that also, this is John Baker, will that also do it if they've done the same paper for other courses?
It still would exclude that student, yes.
Is there a way to fix that?
I guess that would be maybe a Turnitin specific issue since this is, I mean, we're just providing the integration with Turnitin, but we don't have the ability to change functionality in Turnitin. Okay, did anyone have other questions related to that? Okay, so I'm going to just continue retracing my steps. So another option for you, you have evaluation required here. If you want to skip that page with the checkbox, you can also click evaluation required under the Carey Business School course listing. And then you don't have to worry about that checkbox page. Takes you only into assignments that are awaiting evaluation within the Carey Business School course listing. And again, to add in any no submission requirements, I check the box here and then click the update button. And then I have a few additional items to be evaluated. And then to evaluate a no submission requirement, I can click this evaluate button. And there's no work submission. So I just have a green button to evaluate the work, and it just takes me directly to a rubric. And I'm going to enter a score for each of the text boxes on the rubric. And calculate the cumulative total score. This one is actually weighted too. I'll point out under each criterion it's a weight of 10%, 30%, 20%, 10%, 10%. And it shows you the formula that's used to calculate the score. It's automatically computed based on weighted criteria row scores, and then the weighted criterion row score is the weight provided, so 10% times the maximum possible score for the rubric, times the score given on the criterion divided by the max criterion score. So then at the end, I can click the blue record as final but release evaluation to author later option, and then click Submit Evaluation Now. And now that item has been removed from my list of work to be evaluated. Okay, so that is the whole process. I do want to point out there's a help link up at the top of the Taskstream page here. We do have a support desk that is available to both students and faculty members. We call it Mentoring Services. And the Mentoring Services help desk number is accessible in this help area. You can see 1-800-311-5656. There's also an address to contact us, help@taskstream.com, and our support hours. So we're Monday through Thursday, 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Friday, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern, Saturday, 12 to 5, and Sundays, 6 to 11 p.m. Eastern. You can also click the Request Support button in the upper right-hand corner of this pop-up window. I'll show you again. You can get to that area by clicking this Help link. Okay, so is there any other question about using the Taskstream integration through Blackboard to do assessments of student work for AACSB accreditation data?
Okay, if you don't have any questions currently, and have other questions later, you're welcome to email us at carey.taskstream@jhu.edu. Well, thank you, Diana, for the training.
Of course, thank you. Thanks to everyone for your time today. We really appreciate it. And I'll be sending Jeremy a link to the recording of this session, so he'll be able to disseminate that to anyone who wants to review what we've looked at today.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.